Set in a small town near Blackwater Creek, this story follows Sarah, a young journalist investigating a series of bizarre and unexplained deaths that have occurred over several decades. Her interest in the town's dark history begins when she discovers that her great-grandfather had died under mysterious circumstances while visiting the creek. The creek is steeped in local lore, with stories of a malevolent spirit dating back to the late 1800s. Villagers used to tell tales of the Whisperer, a spectral figure seen near the water. Some claimed it was the vengeful ghost of a woman who drowned in the creek after being accused of witchcraft, while others believed it was a demon and drawn to tragedy. Locals avoided the area, but strange deaths continued to plague anyone who dared get too close. Sarah digs deeper into the history of the creek, interviewing locals and reviewing old newspapers. She learns that many who encountered the Whisperer reported hearing eerie, disembodied voices just before their deaths. Despite warnings, Sarah decides to visit Blackwater Creek, hoping to experience something firsthand. During her first visit, she feels an overwhelming sense of dread, but nothing more. However, strange occurrences begin to happen shortly after she leaves the creek. Sarah starts hearing whispers at night, seeing fleeting shadows in the corners of her vision, and sensing that someone or something is watching her. Her skepticism fades as she realizes she may have attracted the attention of the very spirit she sought to find. As Sarah continues her investigation, the hauntings grow more intense. The whispers become louder, and she experiences nightmarish visions of drowning and ghostly figures clawing at her. Items in her apartment move on their own, and she starts finding puddles of water in unusual places. She contacts a local historian who confirms that many others have been haunted after visiting Blackwater Creek, but none survived long enough to tell their stories in full. Desperate, Sarah decides to return to the creek one last time. She brings with her an old journal belonging to her great-grandfather, hoping it might provide some insight into how to stop the hauntings. At the creek, she encounters the Whisperer for the first time, a gaunt, spectral figure with hollow eyes that seem to reach into her soul. The spirit lures Sarah deeper into the water, whispering promises of revealing the truth about her great-grandfather's death. In a terrifying sequence, Sarah is pulled underwater and finds herself in a ghostly reflection of the creek, a twisted world where the spirits of those who died there remain trapped. She confronts the Whisperer and learns that the spirit was indeed a woman wrongfully killed. But her anger turned her into something far more sinister, a vengeful force that can never be satisfied. In a desperate attempt to free herself, Sarah confronts her fears and acknowledges the guilt and sufferings of the Whisperer, ultimately helping her find some form of peace. However, the process nearly kills her, and she barely escapes the creek alive. Sarah emerges from Blackwater Creek forever changed. Though the spirit no longer haunts her, she carries the emotional and psychological scars of her encounter. She writes an article exposing the dark history of the town and the truth about the hauntings, but she decides not to reveal everything, knowing that some things are better left unsaid. In the final moments, Sarah reflects on the true cost of uncovering the past, leaving readers with the chilling implication that the Whisperer may not be entirely gone. In 1817, the Bell family, living in a rural farmhouse in Adams, Tennessee, began experiencing strange and terrifying events. John Bell, the father, was the first to notice odd occurrences: strange animals prowling the land, sounds of knocking and scratching at the walls, and eerie disembodied voices. What started as minor disturbances quickly escalated into something far more sinister. The Bell family soon became the center of a well-known legend that would persist for centuries, the story of the Bell Witch. The hauntings plagued them for years, but no one could explain who or what was behind it. Some believed it was the ghost of a neighbor, Kate Batts, who had cursed the family. Others thought it might be a malevolent demon. The Bell Witch legend began in the early 1800s, when John Bell had a dispute with his neighbor, Kate Batts, over a piece of land. After losing the land, Kate allegedly cursed John and his family. Not long after, John and his children began experiencing terrifying supernatural events, objects moving on their own, violent poltergeist activity, and an unseen entity tormenting them. Kate was rumored to have been a witch, practicing dark arts and communicating with spirits. Before her death, she reportedly swore that she would come back to haunt John Bell and his descendants. The Bell family soon became convinced that Kate's curse was real and that her spirit had returned to exact revenge. The Bell family initially tried to ignore the disturbances, believing they might just be strange but harmless occurrences. However, the incidents quickly grew more violent. The children were often slapped or pinched by unseen hands, furniture would be overturned, and heavy objects would be thrown across the room. On several occasions, the entity's voice could be heard whispering in the dark, cursing the family and mocking them. Word of the hauntings spread throughout the community, drawing visitors from all over the country. Many witnesses claimed to have experienced the supernatural phenomena firsthand, including future President Andrew Jackson, who reportedly visited the Bell home and left convinced that the entity was real. Despite their best efforts to rid themselves of the curse, the Bell family remained tormented. As the years passed, the entity's attacks became more focused on John Bell. The family patriarch experienced frequent episodes of illness and fatigue, which doctors couldn't explain. The entity, now frequently referred to as the Bell Witch, made it clear that its primary target was John. It was as though the curse had come to life, seeking to destroy him. The Bell Witch's activity grew increasingly malevolent. Visitors and family members reported seeing shadowy figures, hearing eerie laughter, and experiencing intense feelings of dread when entering the house. Sometimes the witch would even speak in full sentences, taunting John Bell and predicting his impending death. By 1820, John Bell's health had deteriorated rapidly. The Bell Witch openly took credit for his suffering, declaring that she would soon kill him. In December of that year, John was found dead in his bed. A strange vial of liquid was discovered nearby, and when a small amount of it was given to a cat, the animal died instantly. The Bell Witch's voice was heard gleefully proclaiming, "I fixed his medicine." John Bell's death was officially ruled as poisoning, but no one could explain how the vial of liquid had appeared. The family buried him shortly afterward, but even during the funeral, the witch could be heard singing and laughing. After John Bell's death, the entity's presence in the home gradually began to fade, but not entirely. The Bell family continued to experience minor disturbances for several months, though the intense hauntings stopped. The Bell Witch made one final appearance, promising to return in 7 years. True to her word, the Bell Witch reappeared in 1828, targeting John Bell Jr. and his family. The haunting was less violent this time, but it was enough to convince the Bell family that the witch was still very much real. After a brief period of activity, the witch once again disappeared, this time claiming she would return in 107 years. The legend of the Bell Witch has persisted for centuries, with many claiming that her spirit still haunts the area around Adams, Tennessee. Visitors to the old Bell property often report strange occurrences, from ghostly apparitions to mysterious voices in the woods.